You had the plan. You wrote it down. You felt the clarity of it, the excitement of it, the absolute certainty that this time you were going to follow through. And then something happened that was not dramatic enough to be a real excuse. The couch was comfortable. The show was already playing. The familiar routine pulled you back so gently you barely noticed it happening until another week had passed, and the plan was still exactly where you left it, untouched. And you did what most people do in that moment. You blamed yourself, your laziness, your lack of discipline, your weakness. But here is what nobody has told you and what changes everything once you understand it. You were not being weak. You were being perfectly obedient to one of the most powerful and most ancient programs running inside your brain. A program that was never designed to help you succeed. It was designed to keep you alive. And in a world that no longer requires survival in the way that program was built for, it has become the single greatest obstacle standing between you and everything you say you want. Today, we are going to go deep into the neuroscience and evolutionary psychology of why your brain loves comfort more than success. And more importantly, what you can do about it starting today. To understand why your brain resists growth and change and effort so persistently, you need to understand where your brain came from. The human brain you are operating with right now is not a modern instrument. It is an ancient one. The core structures that govern your motivation, your risk assessment, your energy management, and your emotional responses were shaped by approximately 200,000 years of human evolution in environments that were radically different from the one you are navigating today. In that environment, comfort was not a lifestyle preference. It was a survival signal. When you were comfortable, it meant you were safe. You were warm, you were sheltered, you had enough food, the tribe was intact, and your nervous system registered comfort as confirmation that everything critical was okay. Discomfort, on the other hand, meant danger. It meant something in the environment required urgent attention. It meant expenditure of precious energy that might not be replenishable. And in a world where energy expenditure could literally mean the difference between surviving and not surviving, the brain developed a profound and deeply wired bias toward conserving energy wherever possible, toward choosing the familiar over the unknown, toward staying inside the boundaries of what had already proven safe rather than venturing into uncertainty where threats might be waiting. That ancient brain is still running, right now, in your life, in your choices, in the invisible pull you feel toward the known and away from the difficult. And understanding this is the first step toward working with it, instead of being unconsciously controlled by it. Here is a neurological fact that will reframe every moment of procrastination you have ever experienced. Your brain represents approximately 2% of your body weight, but consumes approximately 20% of your total energy. It is the most metabolically expensive organ in your body by an extraordinary margin. And it has evolved with exquisite efficiency mechanisms to manage that energy expenditure. One of the primary mechanisms is what neuroscientists call the principle of least effort, or the law of least mental effort. Your brain is constantly running a cost-benefit calculation on every cognitive and physical action. And when the perceived cost in energy exceeds the perceived immediate benefit, the brain generates a signal that you experience as resistance, fatigue, distraction, or the sudden, overwhelming appeal of literally anything that requires less effort than the task you are supposed to be doing. This is not a character flaw. It is a feature. In the environment the brain was built for, energy conservation was genuinely adaptive. But in your life right now, it means that every time you sit down to do something difficult and meaningful, your brain is running a program that is trying to redirect you toward the path of lowest energy expenditure. And that path almost always leads directly back to comfort. The brain is not sabotaging you out of malice. It is protecting a resource that it was designed to treat as precious and finite. Now let us talk about risk avoidance, because this is where the brain's comfort bias becomes most specifically destructive to modern ambition. The amygdala is an almond-shaped structure deep in your brain, and it is one of the oldest parts of your neural architecture. Its primary function is threat detection and response, and it is extraordinarily good at its job. The problem is that it cannot distinguish between a genuine physical threat and a psychological one. When you contemplate starting a business, having a difficult conversation, leaving a stable situation for a better but uncertain one, publishing your work, asking for what you want, or taking any action that involves uncertainty and potential failure, your amygdala registers the uncertainty itself as threat, not a metaphorical threat. A real one that activates the same neural alarm system that would fire if a predator appeared. And your brain responds the way it was designed to respond to predators. It generates avoidance. It finds reasons why the action is not necessary yet. It surfaces memories of past failures to justify inaction. It creates what feels like a rational and measured assessment of why waiting is the prudent choice. But what it is actually doing is running a survival program in a context where survival is not actually at stake. The risk of starting a podcast is not the same as the risk of leaving the safety of a cave, but your amygdala treats them with a neurologically similar level of alarm. And that alarm is powerful enough to override conscious intention almost every time unless you understand what is happening and have tools to work with it deliberately. Here is the layer that makes the brain's preference for comfort even more neurochemically concrete. Dopamine. We discussed in previous contexts that dopamine is the chemical of anticipation and wanting. And your brain's dopamine system has been calibrated over your lifetime to respond to the specific rewards you have repeatedly experienced. The comfortable routine delivers a known reliable dopamine signal. It is not a large signal, but it is certain. Your brain knows exactly what it is getting and when it is getting it. The ambitious goal, the difficult project, the meaningful change, these things promise a much larger dopamine reward, but it is uncertain and delayed. And the brain's reward circuitry is strongly biased toward certain small rewards over uncertain large ones. Behavioral economists call this hyperbolic discounting, and it is one of the most consistent and most consequential cognitive biases that human beings demonstrate. The value of a reward decreases steeply the further in the future it is, and the less certain its arrival, which means that the comfort of the couch right now is neurochemically competing with the achievement of your goal 6 months from now, and the couch has a structural advantage in that competition that has nothing to do with how much you actually value the goal. Your brain is not weighing your values. It is weighing chemical certainty, and certainty almost always wins against possibility in the short term. Now here's where the understanding becomes genuinely empowering rather than just explanatory. Because knowing that your brain is running an ancient comfort-seeking program does not mean you are its prisoner. It means you can stop fighting it blindly and start outmaneuvering it intelligently. The first and most important strategic insight comes from understanding what researchers call the comfort zone, not as a fixed territory, but as an expandable one. Your comfort zone is not defined by your personality. It is defined by your history of repeated experience. Everything currently inside your comfort zone was once outside it. Every skill you have, every situation you can navigate with ease, every relationship dynamic you handle without anxiety. All of it was once unfamiliar and therefore registered by your brain as threatening. And it moved inside the comfort zone through one mechanism and one mechanism only: exposure. Repeated experience that did not kill you and therefore gradually recalibrated your threat assessment. This means that the boundary of your comfort zone is not a wall. It is a gradient. And each time you step into discomfort and survive it, your brain updates its threat assessment, and what was threatening becomes familiar. What was unfamiliar becomes comfortable. Your comfort zone is not something to escape. It is something to expand. One exposure at a time. Here is the most practically powerful tool that behavioral science has produced for working with the brain's comfort bias rather than against it: environment design. Because willpower, as we have established, is competing against 200,000 years of evolutionary programming, and it loses that competition with depressing regularity. But the environment your choices live in determines what requires effort and what does not. And if you can design your environment so that the growth-oriented behavior is the path of least resistance, you are essentially using the brain's own laziness against its comfort bias. Remove the friction from the things you want to do. Put the book on your pillow. Set out the workout clothes the night before. Have the healthy food at the front of the fridge. Open the work document before you close your laptop for the night. Add friction to the things you want to do less. Log out of the social media app so the login requirement creates a pause. Put the remote control in a different room. Delete the delivery app from your phone's home screen. These are not dramatic life overhauls. They are micro-environmental adjustments that shift which behavior requires less energy in any given moment. And the brain will almost always choose the behavior that requires less energy. Give it the right choice as the easy choice, and you are working with its deepest programming instead of spending your entire life fighting it. Here is the truth that ties everything together, and it is the most important thing you will take from this video. Your brain's love of comfort is not your enemy. It is a misapplied friend. It is a protective system running in the wrong context. And now that you understand it, you can do something that almost no one does. You can feel the pull of comfort and recognize it not as truth but as programming. You can feel the resistance to effort and recognize it not as a sign that the effort is not worth making but as evidence that your ancient brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. And then you can make a conscious choice that overrides the program, not by being stronger than the program, but by being smarter than it, by designing environments that make growth easier than stagnation, by taking small exposures that gradually expand what your brain registers as safe, by building the identity of someone who moves toward discomfort deliberately because they understand that discomfort is not danger. It is the sensation of becoming. Every person who has ever built something meaningful, achieved something difficult, or transformed their life in a significant way did it not by eliminating the pull of comfort, but by learning to act in the presence of it. They felt the gravity of the familiar, and they moved anyway, not once dramatically, but daily, quietly, repeatedly, until the thing that once required courage became the new comfort, and then they expanded the boundary again. This is how human beings grow, not by defeating the ancient brain, but by understanding it clearly enough to lead it somewhere it was never programmed to go.